Let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. The last time you revenge traded, do you actually remember making the decision to do it? Or did it just happen? One moment you're watching the chart, you just took a loss. And then, almost like something took over, you're back in, bigger size, no plan, chasing. And part of you knows it's wrong. Part of you is watching yourself do it like you're standing outside your own body, but you can't stop. That's not a discipline problem. That's not a strategy problem. That is a wiring problem. And the wiring started long before you ever opened a trading platform. Today, we're going to go somewhere most trading channels are afraid to go. We're not just going to talk about what revenge trading is. We're going to talk about where it was born. Inside you, in your childhood, in the moments that shaped how your nervous system responds to loss, to failure, to feeling out of control. Because here's the truth that the trading industry doesn't want to sell you. You could have the best strategy in the world, the cleanest risk management, the most disciplined journal, and you will still blow up, repeatedly, if you don't understand why you were built the way you are. This video is a personality test. Not a quiz, not a checklist. A real, deep, psychological excavation of the trader you became because of the child you were. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to recognize yourself in ways that might shock you. And that recognition, that is the beginning of actually changing.
Let's start with the foundation. Revenge trading is not a trading problem. Say that again to yourself. Revenge trading is not a trading problem. It is an emotional regulation problem wearing a trading costume. When you revenge trade, you are not trying to make money. You are trying to resolve an emotional state. You are trying to escape the feeling of loss, not the financial loss, the emotional loss, the threat to your identity, the shame, the frustration, the feeling of being wrong, of being powerless, of being out of control. And here's where it gets fascinating and a little uncomfortable. Those feelings, you felt them before, long before trading, in situations you probably don't even consciously remember anymore. But your nervous system, it remembers everything. Psychologists call it emotional memory. The body stores experiences of powerlessness, rejection, failure, and shame. And when a new experience triggers those same feelings, the body doesn't know the difference between then and now. It just knows this feeling is dangerous. Do something. Fix it. Now. And in trading, doing something means getting back in the market. That is revenge trading at its neurological core. Now let's talk about who you are, because not everyone revenge trades the same way, and not everyone was wired for it in the same way. There are specific childhood patterns, specific personality types that make certain traders almost predestined to struggle with this. Let's break them down, one by one.
Number 1, the achiever who was never allowed to fail. You know this person. Maybe you are this person. Growing up, you were good at things. Maybe you were the smart one, the one who got good grades, the one parents pointed to with pride, the one who won things, achieved things, performed well. And when you did, the love, the approval, the validation came flooding in. But here's the darker side of that story. What happened when you failed? When you got a bad grade? When you lost a game? When you made a mistake? For many high achievers, failure wasn't treated as a normal part of life. It was treated as a crisis. Maybe your parents panicked. Maybe they pushed harder. Maybe they expressed disappointment in ways that felt enormous to a child's nervous system. Or maybe they just went quiet, and that silence was worse than anything they could have said. What you learned at a deeply unconscious level was this: failure is not safe. Failure threatens the love, the approval, the identity that makes me who I am. So you developed a relationship with failure that is not neutral. It is charged. It is threatening. And as an adult, every trading loss is not just a loss.
It is a reactivation of that old terror, the terror of being seen as a failure, the terror of losing your identity as someone who succeeds. And what does the achiever do when that terror hits? They immediately try to fix it, prove it wrong, erase it. They revenge trade. Not to make money, to restore their self-image, to prove to themselves, to the market, to some ghost of a parent in their head that they are not a failure. And this is why the achiever is one of the most dangerous trader personalities when it comes to emotional discipline, because
Their entire psychological infrastructure is built around not losing, around always being right. And the market? The market does not care about your identity. The market will be wrong. It will make you wrong, 50% of the time by design. If your childhood taught you that being wrong is existentially dangerous, you will fight the market every single time it calls you wrong, and you will lose. Number 2, the fixer who grew up in chaos. This one is different. This is the trader who grew up in an environment that was unpredictable. Maybe there was financial instability in the home. Maybe there was emotional volatility, a parent with anger issues, addiction, mental health struggles. Maybe things just felt out of control, and you, as a child, learned to manage that chaos. You became the fixer, the stabilizer, the one who read the room before anyone else, the one who stepped in to smooth things over, to problem solve, to take action when things were going wrong. And that was a survival skill, a genuinely intelligent adaptation to your environment. But here's what it cost you. You learned to feel responsible for things that are not in your control. You learned that when things go wrong, the correct response is to do something immediately, to intervene, to fix. Because in your childhood, doing nothing while chaos unfolded felt unbearable, and sometimes it actually was dangerous. Now translate that to trading. The market moves against you. Your position is bleeding, and your nervous system, wired in that childhood kitchen, in that unpredictable home, screams, do something, fix this. You cannot just sit here and watch it go wrong. That's not safe. That's never been safe. So you act. You average down when you shouldn't. You flip your position. You add to a loser. You revenge trade. Not because you've analyzed the situation, but because sitting still while something goes wrong is neurologically intolerable for you. The cruel irony is this. The very thing that made you a survivor as a child, your impulse to act, to fix, to intervene, is the exact thing that destroys your trading account as an adult. Trading requires you to sit with discomfort, to let losses breathe, to not intervene every time something goes against you, to trust a process even when it feels chaotic. And for the fixer, that is one of the hardest things in the world to do, because stillness, in the face of chaos, never felt like wisdom. It always felt like giving up. Number 3, the competitor who was never allowed to lose. Pay attention here, because this one is subtle, and it destroys accounts quietly before you even notice it happening. This is the trader who grew up in an intensely competitive environment. Sports, siblings, academic rankings, a parent who was extremely results-driven, a culture where winning was the expectation and losing was embarrassing. And the key detail here isn't just that winning was celebrated, it's that losing was shamed, publicly or privately, explicitly or implicitly. You were taught, through 1,000 small moments, that losing means something about you, that it reflects on your worth, your intelligence, your toughness. So you developed something psychologists call loss aversion on steroids. Standard loss aversion, the cognitive bias where losses feel twice as painful as equivalent gains feel good, is present in all humans. But for the competitor, that ratio is even more extreme, because a loss isn't just financially painful, it is identity shattering. It confirms the nightmare that you are a loser. Now, here's where it becomes particularly dangerous in trading.
The competitor doesn't just revenge trade after big losses. They revenge trade after any loss that feels like it shouldn't have happened. A trade that was taken off them by a stop run. A trade that reversed right after they exited. A trade where the entry was technically good, but the outcome was bad. Because for the competitor, the result is inseparable from the performance. They cannot hold in their mind the idea that a good process can produce a bad outcome, and that it means nothing about them. That concept is psychologically foreign. So they keep trading, chasing the win that proves they were right all along, that they're not a loser, that the market was wrong, not them. And this is where accounts go to zero. Not in one dramatic blow-up, in a slow, grinding, I'll just take one more trade erosion that the competitor justifies every step of the way.
Number 4. The invisible child who needed to prove their worth. This is perhaps the most heartbreaking one, and if it resonates with you, I want you to receive it with compassion rather than judgment. The invisible child grew up feeling overlooked. Maybe you were the middle child, the quiet one, the one who didn't cause trouble, so nobody really checked in on you. Maybe you had a sibling who demanded more attention through achievement, through difficulty, through personality. Maybe your parents were emotionally absent, not because they didn't love you, but because life was hard and they were overwhelmed. Whatever the mechanism, you grew up with a quiet, persistent question humming underneath everything you did. Am I worth noticing? Am I enough? And you learned to answer that question through performance, through doing things, through achieving results that forced people to see you, to acknowledge you, to say, look at what you've done. Now, bring that psychology into trading. Every winning trade for the invisible child isn't just financially positive. It is proof of worth. It is the validation that childhood never reliably gave them. It's the market, a completely indifferent, impersonal mechanism, saying, yes, you matter, you're smart, you did well. And every losing trade, it is that old silence again, that old invisibility, that feeling of, I'm not good enough, I'll never be good enough, nobody sees me. And the invisible child cannot tolerate that feeling, not because they're weak, but because that feeling is ancient and enormous, and they have been running from it their entire lives. So they revenge trade, not for money, for acknowledgement. They need the next trade to validate them. They need the market to give them back what the loss took away, not the money, the identity, the sense of mattering. And the market will never, ever give you that, because the market doesn't know you exist. That is not a flaw. That is freedom once you understand it. But first you have to grieve the thing you were looking for in the market that the market was never built to provide. Number 5. The controller who learned that letting go means getting hurt. The last personality type, and possibly the most common among experienced traders who've been struggling for years. The controller grew up learning that when they trusted other people or trusted circumstances, they got hurt. Maybe promises were broken. Maybe they were let down by adults who were supposed to protect them. Maybe they were in situations where they had no control and bad things happened as a result. And so the controller learned the only logical lesson available to a child in that situation. If I control it myself, I am safe. If I let go of control, I get hurt. This translates into trading in a very specific, very destructive pattern. The controller cannot follow a plan that doesn't go their way, because following a plan that's going wrong feels like trusting something outside yourself, and that was never safe. The controller moves stops, doesn't honor exits, overrides signals, because every moment they surrender to a process they don't fully control in real time feels like falling, like the ground disappearing beneath their feet. And revenge trading for the controller is essentially an act of reclaiming power. The market made me wrong. The market took from me, and I will go back in and I will take it back myself, on my terms, with my decisions.
It is the psychology of someone who has never been able to trust that things will work out if they just let them unfold. And trading, at its highest level, requires enormous trust. Trust in your edge, trust in probability, trust in the process. Trust that a loss today does not mean failure tomorrow. For the controller, that trust is not just difficult. It is, at the deepest level, terrifying.
Now, let's talk about what actually changes things, because this video isn't meant to leave you sitting in the weight of recognition without a path forward. Understanding where these patterns came from is the beginning. It is not the destination. Here is what actually rewires a revenge trading brain. The first thing is what psychologists call the pause protocol, and it sounds simple, but it is extraordinarily difficult in practice. When you take a loss, before you do anything, you build in a mandatory pause. Not a rule written in your journal, a physical pause. You close the platform. You stand up. You walk away from the desk. You do not touch anything related to trading for a minimum of 15 minutes. Why does this work neurologically? Because the emotional brain, the part that fires revenge trading, operates on a different timescale than the rational brain. The emotional response peaks within seconds and begins to fade within minutes. By creating a mandatory gap between stimulus, the loss, and response, the next trade, you are literally giving your prefrontal cortex time to come back online. Most traders who revenge trade do it within 90 seconds of closing their losing position. 90 seconds. That is entirely your emotional brain making decisions. Your rational brain hasn't even been invited to the conversation yet. The pause protocol changes that. It is not about willpower. It is about timing. The second thing is what I call the identity audit. Sit down, away from the charts, away from the screens, and write down what a losing trade means about you. Not what it means financially, what it means about you as a person. Be honest. This is private. This is just you and the page. Most traders, when they do this honestly, will write something like, "It means I'm not good enough. It means I made a mistake. It means I'm losing. It means I'm a failure." And when you see that on the page, when you see the story your nervous system tells about a losing trade, something shifts because you realize that you have been carrying an enormous weight into every single trade. You have been betting not just money, but identity. Every trade is a referendum on your worth as a person. And no trade can carry that weight. No strategy can survive that pressure. The identity audit makes the invisible visible. And once it's visible, you can begin to separate it. The trade is the trade. You are not the trade. The third thing is something I want you to understand on a physiological level. Your body goes into stress response when you take a loss. Cortisol floods Your system. Heart rate elevates. The nervous system shifts into threat mode. And in threat mode, the brain narrows. It loses access to nuance, to probability thinking, to long-term perspective. It sees only the immediate threat and wants to neutralize it immediately. This is not weakness. This is biology. This is a 200,000-year-old system doing exactly what it was designed to do. But you can interrupt it, physically. Slow, deep breathing, specifically the kind where your exhale is longer than your inhale, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, the one that tells your body, you are not being chased by a lion. You are safe. You can think clearly. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Repeat 5 times. Do this every single time you take a loss, before you even look at the next setup. This is not meditation advice. This is neurological intervention. You are literally shifting your brain chemistry in real time. Now let me speak to something deeper, something that goes beyond techniques and protocols. The reason most traders never fix revenge trading is that they are trying to fix the behavior without addressing the source. They write rules in their journal. They set daily loss limits. They download apps that lock their trading platform. And they still revenge trade because the source is still running underneath everything, untouched. You cannot rules manage your way out of a nervous system pattern. Rules live in the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain. But revenge trading fires from the amygdala, the emotional brain.
The part of you that was wired before you could read, before you had language, before you had any concept of risk management or trading plans. This is why the work has to go deeper. It has to go to the stories you tell yourself about what loss means. It has to go to the moments in your life where failure felt catastrophic, where being wrong felt dangerous, where losing felt like being erased. Not to live there, not to stay in the past, but to update the data. Because your nervous system is operating on outdated information. It learned its lessons in a childhood context, a context where you were small, dependent, and genuinely vulnerable. A context where the approval of caregivers was literally tied to your survival. You are not that child anymore. A losing trade cannot take away your shelter. It cannot take away the people who love you. It cannot erase who you are. It is a financial event. It is a data point. It is, in the grand sweep of a trading career, utterly unremarkable. But your nervous system doesn't know that. Not yet. Updating that is the real work. And it happens slowly, through repetition, through experience, through intentionally sitting with the discomfort of a loss and discovering again and again that you survive it, that the world does not end, that you are still here, still okay, still a trader. Each time you take a loss and don't revenge trade, you are writing new data into your nervous system. You are teaching it a new lesson. Loss is survivable. Loss does not define me. I am more than this trade. That is how the wiring changes. Not through a technique, through thousands of small moments of choosing differently.
Let me bring this home. You began this video as a trader, trying to understand why you revenge trade. But somewhere in these past 20 minutes, I think you've realized you're not just trying to understand a trading habit. You're trying to understand yourself. The version of you that learned long ago in ways you never chose that loss is dangerous, that failure is threatening, that being wrong is existentially costly. That version of you was doing the best they could with what they had. But the market doesn't care about that version of you. The market doesn't reward the child who needed to prove something. The market doesn't validate the fixer who couldn't tolerate chaos. The market doesn't give the invisible child the acknowledgement they were searching for. The market doesn't comfort the controller who needed to hold everything together. The market rewards the trader who has done the harder work, the internal work, the work of separating their identity from their outcomes, the work of learning to sit with uncertainty without flinching, the work of building a relationship with loss that is not charged with childhood terror. That is the trader on the other side of this journey. And here is what I know about you, just from the fact that you watched this far. You are not here because you're someone who gives up easily. You are here because you are trying to understand something that most people never even think to question. Most traders just keep blaming their strategy, their broker, their entries, their timing. You are asking the harder question. Why do I keep doing this to myself? That question is everything. That question is the beginning of a different trading life.
So here is your takeaway. The one thing I want you to carry out of this video. The next time you feel the pull to revenge trade, and you will feel it because the nervous system doesn't rewire overnight, I want you to pause. Not to think about your rules, not to review your trading plan, just to notice. Notice what you're feeling in your body. Notice the urgency, the heat, the pressure to act. Notice the story your mind is telling you about what this loss means about you. And then ask yourself one question. Is this the trader talking, or is this the child? Because the trader knows that losses are part of the job. The trader has a plan, an edge, a long-term perspective. The trader understands that one bad trade means nothing about the next 100 trades. But the child? The child is scared. The child feels threatened. The child needs to fix this right now. When you can tell the difference, when you can actually feel the difference in your body between those two voices, you have done something most traders never do. You have created space between stimulus and response. And in that space is your freedom, your actual freedom, as a trader and as a person. If this video made you see something about yourself that you hadn't seen before, that's not an accident. This is the work, the real work. The work that changes accounts, not because it changes strategies, but because it changes the person executing them. Share this with a trader you know, not because they revenge trade, but because every trader is carrying something from before the charts. Every trader is more than their P&L, and every trader deserves to understand themselves deeply enough to trade the way they're actually capable of trading. Subscribe if you're ready to go deeper than most channels are willing to go. We don't just talk about setups here. We talk about the person behind the setups, because that is where trading is won and lost, long before the market ever opens. I'll see you in the next one.